morning, everyone. Well, maybe I should say afternoon or evening, since we're getting a huge global audience these days. And I'm really excited to have my guest today is Jill Mattson. And I've followed her for years, her books, her CDs, her sound healing. And she's a prolific artist, musician, and author, and widely recognized expert and composer in the field of sound healing. She's produced 10 musical CDs with intriguing magical tracks using ancient and modern techniques. And she's 5-time author and received many awards for her books and her CDs, including Best Music of the Year and Best Book of the Year. And she's been featured in many teleseminars, radio shows, magazines, and she's got an incredible website. It's jillswingsoflight.com. It's interesting, Jill, that when I look at that, the light becomes flight.
I know, but that's okay too.
No, it's the analogy with the wings. So it's the wings of light, and then they take flight. I looked today, did I have that right? So here she is. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you and to meet
you. Good to have you. And like, this is, I just find this with my website, Invisible Architecture, that the work you did with the sound through the ages is just the underpinning of invisible architecture. It just
Absolutely.
is what created the civilizations and how they changed and morphed. So I was thinking, like, to begin, that you could maybe share your like in-depth insights, how you went and researched. I mean, more than anyone I've seen.
Okay.
The history of, this is what I'm so into also, the history, the synchronicity, all of that of sound, starting with Lemuria, and then just, you know, come down as you did it with the octaves. And perfect. Let me, I'll get your bio out of here and ready to listen.
Okay. Quickly, how I started on this quest was that I was writing an autobiography of God, and it was rewriting the Old Testament, New Testament. And as I really got into being God during the Old Testament, I got very upset because he was moody and had PMS, you know, and my view of God was love, and I was justifying and like covering up for him.
Sounds like Yahweh.
Anyway, I had an epiphany, and I decided that God is love for me, and anything else I won't accept. And it was a very powerful, life-changing event. And I started by going through different texts. I wasn't quite ready to give up the Old Testament. So I looked for the Old Testament from Babylonia in different versions. I ended up in the Kabbalah. Ooh la la. There was all kinds of different concepts of God as love in different ways.
Right.
Just lit me on fire. Shortly thereafter, I was into Sumeria. And the ancient texts there, they're full of music, and they're full of love and different ways and thinkings of God. And as I started on this spiritual quest, being a musician, I noticed that ancient people were using music for really weird things. And at first I thought, well, maybe they're on drugs, you know? Because they said some crazy things.
Probably were.
And then on time, you know, they kept saying it all over the globe, the same things. So they're saying they're using music for changing your personality, for rehab, for government, for police, for vitamins, for weather. And, you know, my eyes are getting really big and I'm so excited. So I started to catalog the music and just go around the globe. The second thing I found was that regardless what anybody thinks, ancient people believed in both Lemuria and Atlantis. And they also had a widespread belief that Atlantis sunk in part due to the misuse of sound. I mean, sound sinking a continent, sound ruining the culture and genocide. So anyway, they were very secretive. Like Hitler was always searching for more and more esoteric stuff because he saw power in it. And the ancient people saw power in it.
I mean, he was really into archaeological.
Oh, gosh, yes. For power.
Everywhere, for power, looking for the ancient texts. Yeah.
And they foresaw Hitler's. And so they would have like clubs, you know, like the country club or something, and, you know, like Pythagorean school or Confucius's inner circle. And in order to have the information on sound, you had to be in like the club.
Right.
And the club meant that you had values, integrity, and psychic powers. So you would be tested for all three. And the only other way you got into the club was if you were like the emperor or the pharaoh or the top dog. So, but each school had, you know, their history books, they passed it down orally so nobody could misuse it. And they would want to attract the best students. So just like in a movie trailer, they'd put the best parts, you know, out on the movie trailer to get people in the doors. Each culture did that. So China gave you a secret. Egypt gave you a secret. The Pythagoreans. And as you went through the globe, they were all different. And then I mean, I just kind of went on a frenzy and couldn't stop. You know, I started with Lemuria, and that would be with channelings. And actually coming out of southern India, there's a lot on Lemuria. And sorry, postman.
It's Zoom. The postman will knock next. Anyhow, yeah.
So anyway, I started there, and their music was just so different. I couldn't even recognize it as music. And they wouldn't even characterize music like entertainment. So I'm thinking whoever thought of music as entertainment had like horns and a red spiked tail. Because it's very powerful. And when we lost the understanding that music changes us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, our agriculture, everything, when we lost that, we became powerless. So anyway, the music is essentially math. So the Pythagoreans taught that all is number expressed as music. So 1 cycle per second, 2 cycles per second, 3 beats, 4 beats, an interval of 2 notes, 3 notes. And so you can see how math is woven into everything musical. And each culture, as time went on, had a different number pattern that was emphasized. And they didn't see numbers like you and I do. They saw numbers as energy. They came right out and said, like, the bass, the, you know, kind of for the low lifes use numbers for mathematics. It had disrespect. Mathematics was energy. Like if you look at the Sumerian pantheon, they had a god 1, god 2, god 3, meaning a god like the sun, individual, alone, the god of a couple. You know, it's different. It's very different. So then you find that the cultures would adopt a number. So Lemuria, their music was 9. And according to the way people wrote about it and channeled about it, was that the smallest note was 9 of our notes, which mean we could only hear like a handful of notes, which means they were clairaudient.
Right.
They weren't Homo sapiens.
Right.
And then you go into Atlantis that has a reported 250,000, you know, 250,000 years history. You know, I mean, we have what, 2,000 years of recorded history, you know. So anyway, the earlier people I would think were not Homo sapiens, the latter were. And so their music comes into 8 and to 7. And then when you get into recorded history, very, very definitely. You get into the cradle of civilization, Sumeria, 6. Base 60 math. Everything is based on 6. And 6 is really intriguing in that our musical scale, and they would feel that the scales are kind of like our string tuning for our planet. Time tuning, string tuning, a vibrational cosmic influence that influences the whole society. Perhaps it changes over time. So 6, like in our Earth, we characteristically all through time, all over the globe, we divide the musical octave into 12 half notes. Or at least six goes right across the circle for us today. 6 and 6 equals 12. And so the Sumerians were into doing a lot of work with countertones and complementary tones. Like the way their music was divided, it's hard to explain. It correlates to our color chart. It correlates to today's musical scale. And if you use notes that are 6 notes apart, the reciprocal's mathematical. So think of a seesaw. This is C, this is G. If you have too much G in your body, you don't have enough C.
Okay.
So think of this as Cancer. This is anti-Cancer. This is 10 cycles per second. This is 1/10. 1/10 times 10 cancels out. So, they had a very powerful mathematical system. And I'm going quickly because we don't have time. Into China.
Okay. At one point when I was going, didn't you think each culture had a specific note they went with? Like China?
Yes, they did. They had a specific note. They had specific number patterns. Like, for example, China coming in had mostly 5 notes, 5 instruments, 5 rhythms. Then they also tuned mainly to the note of F. Like today, there's all the arguments over which A do we tune to. I mean, they didn't even tune to A. And because they believed that the people on earth were influenced by waves from heaven, that kind of cosmic influence coming in would affect our culture, our consciousness, and they would tune to time. And this is China, this is Egypt, this is Sumeria, this is Greek, this is American Indians, this is Aztecs. The whole earth is doing this. So they're tuning to time. Their music is even different in the morning because that's gentle and soft, and they want to tune you different at noon.
And go along with their elements and their
absolutely, and they
I Ching
musical scale, and there's 5 elements. Well, there's 5 tones in a musical octave in China as well. No coincidence there. And then they would assign like water to one of those notes, and right across the chart, if you will, is going to be fire. Water puts out fire. And so forth. So they would use elemental tuning that you use in your house with their songs. And the government in China in the early years would, the emperor, one of his most important responsibilities was to set the exact tone. So in other words, F could be a little high, a little low. Ni is all F. And he would meditate and connect to the universe because the universe was moving, which it is. And if he balanced that properly, they believe they'd be in tune, in time, in harmony with heaven, and hence gods themselves, impregnable, in power, no uprest. And so he would tune it, and then, different people in the government would tune the different notes. Anybody who had an instrument would have to come in every year and burn all their flutes and get new ones. Everybody had to be in tune.
Wow.
Because the idea was that if you and I live in different towns, and F and I have an F, when you play them together, they sound annoying. And therefore, if your community and my community would be annoyed at each other, because you would radiate and I would radiate because you absorb sound. And so they policed their own in terms of music. And like you had to be like really high in the muckety muck chain, you know, like top rooster and maybe second chain to even have a musician. And they'd correlate on music to shapes. It was very important where and what angle the music hit you. And so they're breaking sound into smaller components than we even think of. And they're reporting changing the weather, healing plagues, or starting plagues for their enemy.
Maybe we need to bring this back for the weather in California.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. And then they would use it for creating virtue. So they believed if your music in a country was always romantic, the people would be romantic. So it was very important for the emperor to choose who they are and what their values are. What are their strengths? What's important? And think of the Chinese music. It's balanced. Above all, it's balanced. And F is right in the middle of the scale. It's right in the middle of the rainbow. It's the balancing cover. No wonder they have, you know, the yin and the yang balance going on, and they tune right in middle of the musical scale for perfect balance. And so obviously somewhere along the line that was important to that emperor. And kind of moving on because we don't have a whole lot of time, but as you go through the different cultures, one thing that I found that was interesting, that when China was at her heyday and India was at hers, they're kind of neighbors, tuning to complementary colors. So you have F, which is associated mathematically with green, and the Hindus tune to that kind of orangey pink color. They're, you know, like the Dalai Lama wears, their gurus wear that pink orange color. That's kind of a C. They tune to C, go figure. So it's kind of like a seesaw again. You have these two countries balancing different frequencies that associate to different things in your body, mathematically, scientifically, that associate to different emotions. And it's almost like you got a playground for learning different skills. And they're all.
At one point, didn't you say, I don't know, at some point, like, but the music was continual. They didn't have endings to their music.
Yes, absolutely. Not only did they didn't have beginning and end to songs. Their songs would be more like wind chimes. And in some places, like for example, in the Druid, there's a nice history of this, though they all did it. They had perpetual choirs. So they would use sacred geometry, the location of the temples, of the great pyramids, the cathedrals, all those lineups of those ley lines. They would have different 24/7 choirs singing balanced collective toning. They would tune an area, and then they would use geometry because shapes create frequencies. And of course, they would understood them both, and by having them both in tune, they're making them more powerful. And they were tuning their people. They were tuning harmony. They were tuning to the heavens. They were tuning for health. And they were making themselves powerful. And you'll find that in these countries, right before a civilization fell, their music got unpopular.
There's some other force that comes in, a bigger cycle.
Exactly. It's like cymatics.
Wow.
If the cymatic pattern was sound,
right,
you know, you go up an octave, it disintegrates, and then it comes up a little bit more complicated. It's kind of like the same thing. The music falls, the country falls, and in comes in like a maybe another color, another note, another lesson, a more complicated energy that has similarities.
Start losing the language.
Absolutely. The early languages were not symbolic. So if you think of in these early histories of these people, they always talk about being telepathic. And I do enjoy telepathy, and not all the time, but often. And it's much deeper than words. So when you and I think everybody does it. I don't think it's just me, but when you really tune into someone and feel their depth, sometimes words just don't do it. And telepathy isn't always in English. You know, it could be any language, but it's usually, I think, in feelings. So they tune in and they have this much knowledge. It's like if we could talk in person, why would we text right here? Right. We wouldn't. And so why would they have language? Because they had this fuller thing of communication. So language at its inception was a toolbox. Brr, gets you warmer. Ouch, relieves pain. And so they're using sound for creation. And doesn't every religion relate creation and sound, or at least almost every religion? And so sound is didactic. And if you, on some of the ancient words in the ancient languages, if you look at them, like you put sound on a drum and then you go underneath that drum and you sing Om, the sound will go to the edge of the drum, cut back in, and they're going to make the symbol of Om. Yeah. So the Om sound is the symbol. And it's like
so perfect that it shows that. Yeah.
Yeah, like Egyptian, Ben means walk forward, Neb means walk back. Notice they're just the letters reversed. It's not a trick, it's the energy. So when they're saying a word, they're creating the energy of the word. And that's your root of your pagan spells, hocus pocus, and all those kind of things. It's the energy of something. And over time, I suppose, in kindness, our languages became symbolic so we don't hurt each other so much. They're weapons, you know, and so language was very much a part of the music. Anyway, going back on our thing, when you start coming into like the time of the Greeks, about 500 BC, their music has tetrachords, and it's really hard to get these patterns because their world was different, and we interpret it through our eyes and misinterpret it. So the Pythagoreans had tetrachords. Well, to me, a chord as a musician is bum, 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 not to them. And so that's why I missed that for so long. A chord to Pythagoreans means just two notes. They can sound really rotten. It doesn't matter, just anything at the same time as a chord. And so they had tetrachords, which were simply half a scale. So their music's all based on 4. And their it appears to me that the people are involving into matter. So you have like your Lemurians that are kind of not quite Homo sapiens, Atlantis, not quite Homo sapiens, turning into Homo sapiens, getting into the early gods, I would say, described in Sumeria, and then coming down into the ancient Chinese people, maybe like with balance and imagination and creativity, coming in with the 5, with the 4. You know, you have more of a balanced number, like you do in feng shui. You use groups of things for their energy. And so fours coming more involved into matter. And in the Greek histories, they talk about people, like we would talk about New Yorkers, or let's say someone from the Southerners. Know what we mean. Right. We all know the stereotype. So their music in New York would be to make them maybe slow down and smile more. Whereas in the South, it might be to speed up.
You know, it's interesting. I wrote an article for my website called Geography of Time. And this guy wrote this book. And he spent years. Have you read it?
No.
Oh, you'll love it. Every city has a certain pace. And he went and he recorded how fast every city was. And the people at the post office gave you your change at that pace. The people walked at that pace all around the world. So it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. I want that book. I'll get it. Don't you worry. So anyway, where was I going on that? So like in what they were doing is that they were talking about the people in their tribes kind of being as one. And we don't even get this, but like that was part of my problem to start off my spiritual quest, When Moses comes down from getting the Bible, his brother Aaron is worshiping a calf and he's all mad. So he kills him and his whole family and the whole clan. And it's like not a blink. I mean, that's genocide of babies and I just don't get that. But they didn't get our point of view because you lived and died as a tribe. You thought together, you looked alike, you had some, you know what I mean? It's like, we don't understand that. But as the music kind of helped us become individuals. And that's what the Greeks were doing. And the Greeks went in and they tried to balance and harmonize and improve personalities. And they're doing that in sacred geometry, like pi. Like I did write a new book on using it's feng shui according to music. And so pi, which sounds abundantly in nature in your body, it's like a harmonizing factor. It's a health factor. It harmonizes us with the earth and the heaven. And they would locate pi, which you can create mathematically in music, in different places in their scales. And maybe even think of when you hear sounds, people have different shaped skulls or different characteristics generally. So you have wave interference patterns in your head, and different frequencies are going to coalesce like cymatics at different places in your brain, creating different emphasis of that brain. So anyway, they would move this phi, and somehow or other, the result was that they were trying to improve individuality and take tribes and make them more individuals.
So the Greeks were the first ones that you found that where the individuality started to really take hold.
And they're doing it with sound, and they're doing it with music. And then Catholic Church, they get in power, and they burnt all the books of the Greeks. And so then they decided they wanted music. Well, first they banned it. And it's written right in their histories that, it's not becoming, don't let anybody sing, no music instruments. And you were thrown out of the Catholic Church for playing music, only they. And then pi, which was so revered because heaven likes it, earth likes it. It's just a frequency we find outside. And it's healthy, and it's inside, and it tunes us, and it makes us healthy. So it was revered, it was honored by, think of the competition of Rome, it would be the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and the Greeks. They all did it. So they outlawed it. It was called music diabolus, music of the devil. So they came in and found another ancient scale that was phi less, but it was still in the ancient healing traditions. It was by, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Arezzo di Geraldo, I don't know, one of their Benedictine monks comes up with this scale, and he steals it from the Arabs because the Arabs still had some of the Greek stuff that hadn't been burnt by the Catholic Church. So he's kind of plagiarizing over there and brings forth a scale, the solfeggio scale, a phi-less scale.
Which is so popular now.
Yes, and it's balanced by not our scale, but a just intonation or a Pythagorean scale. And so he brings that in, and the church only plays that for the upper muckety mucks, or for healing. Only they do the healing. Like if there's a funeral and you see the guys with the little kind of like a stick with bells on it, that's going to be your solfeggio. So they come in, and then they create, this is why we lost some of this wisdom. They created music. The only thing they knew to do was copy the Greeks. They burn all this stuff. They were clueless. So they came up like Ionian, Diorian. They came up with the names of the Greek scales, which were to balance individual populations by using phi. Problem. Phi is the note of the devil, according to the Catholics. Problem. So they just made, I don't know, I think they just made stuff up and then used the same nomenclature. So we're just terribly confused in history.
Now, are these like Gregorian chants?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the early, and no beginning and end. Think of your wind chimes.
Mm-hmm.
So beginning and ends come with amen.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have an end to a song, it begs a beginning.
So when did Amen start?
I would say probably with the Catholics.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know,
I mean the ending music, yeah.
Excuse me, I didn't get your question.
Oh, no, just like when because we were talking about how it was continuous,
Yes.
and then you said amen, you know, it means it's ending. And you said, so with the Catholic Church is when that started then.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes, yes. And they introduced the third interval, which, you know, China, Sumeria, Greeks, all these people, when you talk about an interval of a third that you and I love,
Mm-hmm.
they would talk about crying, you know, gnashing of teeth. And one of the things I learned is as we evolve into matter, we harmonize dissonance. And as time goes on, more and more dissonance has been appearing in our music. So like when I was young, I was taught that jazz was the music of the devil, you know, so really racy stuff to the slippery slopes of hell. And what was so poignant about jazz? Well, it has a 1-7 chord. Said differently, 1 and 7 are going to be next to each other. They're the first time the second interval's introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dissonant. Now they separate it by 7 notes, but it's still dissonant, and it gives jazz that kind of, I don't know, funky feeling.
Edge.
And so today, jazz is played, I don't know, in elevator music.
Mm-hmm.
Or to buy more groceries in the carrots, you know, carrot section, you know, so it's gone from the devil to very innocent in just a short number of years. So something that was scandalous sounding has become innocent in just one lifetime.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that's the same way as the new generations come in with more and more dissonant music. If we can harmonize it, it's kind of like we have more mastery, like we become the stronger vibration, we become the harmony that overcomes the dissonance in our fields.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes you to rap, and the rap music is 1 frequency and a 1 beat. Bum, 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 bum. When you look at the beat patterns, the Hindus are using beats like music, Ayurvedic music, and in fact.
Mm-hmm.
So they have like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like 127 beat patterns.
Wow.
We usually have basically 2, 3, 4, and 4, 4. So you have a bum, 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 or a bum, 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 like a 2 feeling and a 3 feeling. Hindus have 127.
Wow.
And they're using them in the back of their music like Ayurvedic medicine. So this song gets rid of nasal problems. That song clears up a headache, or this type of a headache. They're very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're using in ancient times music that copies either what we're accustomed to in nature,
Mm-hmm.
or a very slow heartbeat piece. Their music is like bum, bum, bum. Think of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Bum, bum, bum. So they're tuning your health by taking you into homeostasis and a healing state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ancient sages would cringe at the thought of our bum, 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 our rock, our jazz, our rap. Oh my gosh, they just roll over in their graves.
It's so funny, like you keep thinking as you come into matter, you're coming into more complexity, but we're really not. We're losing a lot. I mean, it's a different kind.
Yes, yes, yes. And so the dissonance keeps coming, and we keep coming into these smaller and smaller sound bites that we're tuning to. And I like to liken it perhaps to a harmonic series in music. You have a harmonic, and we're not aware of them, but every sound has a harmonic. It's just an air for ripple. So, and it has math underneath it. It goes and starts out very harmonic, and it goes kind of like in a reverse exponential mathematic function, and it just gets very dissonant, and then the cycle starts over again. So it's kind of like every mystic writer says we're on the age of a new golden era, a new Platonic year. That's why you have Nostradamus and John the Beloved doing apocalyptic predictions now, because the music and the time is dissonant, and it's breaking up everything.
Well, you just look at when you were talking about the politics and look at our political system and how divided. You're either in the States, you're either a Republican or a Democrat. You're like, it's so binary. It's interesting. So then to have that music, it just fits with all of that. Yeah,
absolutely. And it releases things. You can look at things in a negative way, the exact same situation, or a positive way. So to look at dissonance in a positive way, think that I'm in an inner city, I'm a gang kid, and I've been horribly abused, and it's either, be abusive or be abused. That kind of environment, the music I'm listening to, the rap, think of it like a jackhammer. It can come in and crack my auric fields that are so hard, and allow love to come in, epiphany, and change. And it might take something so radical to break such crystallization of pain. Or I can be really liking to feel sorry for myself and liking my anger, being very proud of not forgiving. And then that exact same sound pattern increases my negativity. So it can heal or it can harm, but choice is mine. And it comes into our lives now, comes into our earth and the weather. It comes into our governments, our religions.
It reminds me, like with Hindu, with the yugas, the ages, and how what they had now that we're in the Kali Yuga, which is the ending one. And so it's so interesting, like, it's supposed to be the most dark time, but you kind of see everything is reformulating, regrouping. Yeah.
Yes, you can see it in cymatics. Cymatics is when you put sound on a metal plate and then you expose the metal plate to sound. The sand vibrates, goes to the end of the plate and comes back in, and then it lumps up in some areas and not in others. And different intervals will create beautiful shapes and patterns, showing that shapes, another connection between shapes and frequencies. And like, let's say you have a beautiful pattern going in with two intervals, with an interval or two notes, and you take that up an octave, it will disintegrate, total chaos, fall apart, and then it'll reform with, let's say, 4 pictures of the same image. And I think that's what's going on right now with the disintegration. Confucius used to say it's a high state because we're losing constructs, yes, but we're losing consistency and stability, but we're also gaining novelty and insight and creativity. And we got all these shards around us. Now, how are we going to build something better?
Right. Because you can see it really in the language, just how the language has disintegrated with texting. It's just so the grammar's gone, the complexity of the language and so much, but it's so interesting to me because it's so evident, this transition. When you sit back and you look at just like the ugly architecture, everything is just, ready to go into a new form.
I have a new book just out. It's called Home of Power. And it's very much like invisible architecture. And I am your fan as well. But at any rate, in this book, I'm approaching feng shui through sound and, of course, correlating that to colors, which is nothing more than numbers, and correlating to music. And you don't need to be a musician. In essence, I started to create this book because I looked around my my house and I could say, oh, that shape is a musical C. You know, I'm looking
Wow, that's good.
yeah, I'm looking at a square and it is a C. So I can kind of subtly hear it, but I also know mathematically it's a C. So I'm beginning to understand that, you know, my shelf to my floor, well, that's creating an interval, and looking all the harmonics and the relationships and seeing space as invisible music, and it just coming up a very easy ways to rearrange a furniture for harmony, or to get rid of dissonance or electromagnetic harmful energy, just by using shape power, color power, nature power.
Well, Goethe said that architecture is frozen music.
Absolutely. And it's not a metaphor.
Exactly. And
Not
I
a
always
metaphor.
loved, like in the old days when you had the, I have it here, like because this is an older place. Like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
dyslexic, so I can't.
Yeah.
You have the wainscoting and it divides your in perfect phi. So
Yes.
you were always, because we're all phi, so when you were walking around your house, it was divided between the floor and the ceiling, usually 5 to 8, or, you know, a different.
And 5 to 8 creates pi.
Yeah.
There it is, the harmony of the universe, nature.
Exactly.
And it does create a frequency. You can measure it with dowsing, and you can feel it. And you know, you can't really measure the subtle energy, but there's been a tremendous amount of studies that say people in this shape room, this disease will get better. People in around this color, you know, it eases the disease. People with this sound get rid of these symptoms, and that can be scientifically tested. And so the other thing about the book is you can put into frequency your goals. I want a partner. I want abundance. They're frequencies, and you can create that in shapes and colors and nature items, and just rearrange your house a little.
Right.
There it is.
It's so evident, you know, it's so evident sometimes when I do a feng shui consultation and it's one of those houses that's all white. I mean, there's no color. It's just like, so, I mean, sometimes people don't see, or, you know, they have like the main picture when you walk in is some expensive picture they paid $10,000 for, something in the living room, and you muscle test them and they just go weak. They're not even aware of how the furnishings and the shape and the color. So when I'm doing my feng shui, I muscle test a lot with the antiques weaken you, and like that. Yeah, it's so, that's amazing. I want to get that book. Yeah.
Yes. And soon it will be mathematics, because you can do it for your health. You know, you can get, I mean, there were studies in cancer in Poland, I believe, and they were showing how energy crossings in your home, in your bed, over a period of time, you know, are going to result in cancer.
Hartmann grids.
Yeah, exactly.
For in certain parts of Germany, they weren't even giving building permits if there was a major Hartmann grid. They're north-south alignment.
And you can counter that with colors, tones, and frequencies.
Exactly. It reminds me, you know, when I've been going through all of this stuff, that Aristotle started the quadrivium. I'd written a whole thing on my website about the trivium. And this is how everybody from Aristotle, Alexander the Great, you know, Aristotle was his teacher, and all the Neoplatonists, they all learned the trivium, which was grammar, structure, who, what, where, when, and then logic, why, and then rhetoric, how. So you had a basis, but that was elementary school. But when you went to secondary, you learned exactly like you're saying, numbers. It was math. Then the next course was geometry, numbers in space. Then music, numbers in time. And then astrology, astronomy, numbers in space and time. And that was their basic education. I mean, we've gotten so far from that, but it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's exciting because science is confirming it. And as we get better technology, we're confirming more and more. And I think earlier people would say if science can't say it's okay, it's wrong. No, it often means science is not advanced enough
Right.
to
And
measure
it's
it
continually
yet.
changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fixed.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been like really educating, enlightening. And so on my website, Invisible Architecture, I have like these circles of the 5 alchemical symbols. And under the air one, I have an article by you that kind of like goes through a lot of this. Like, so if anybody would like to read, you know, there's one there. And then you can go to her website, which is Jill's
Wings
of Light. I'm so with the flight that okay, Jill's Wings of Light. And then she has another interesting thing, someone I followed for years was Sherry Edwards. And then I saw that you worked with her.
Yes, we do a lot together. And in fact, at coronavirusdefense.org,
Okay.
Sherry and I teamed up and did music to counter, well, we started to counter the coronavirus. Well, I think I touched on that when we talked about the Sumerians having tones that were reciprocal. So at 10 cycles per second, heard at the same time as a 1/10, cancel out. Royal Rife was using that on Cancer in what, the 40s or 20s.
Right.
And your Rife machines, that's what they are. They're canceling frequencies. And Sherry and I had worked before on Ebola on canceling music. And so we started to do coronavirus, and it's man-made according to Sherry. And Sherry observes sound in the body. And she, like usually a virus is maybe 8 to 10 different frequencies, different strands, maybe think of a group or a family. So the coronavirus comes in and it when you cancel it, so it's 10 cycles per second, you listen to 1/10. When you cancel it, there's an activator gene right in that group that triggers the next one. So it's a ring. And that's why it's so deadly, because you know you just can't go in there and cancel it, because as soon as you cancel one, you go into the next. And so instead, what Sherry did, oh bless her soul, she observed in the body how and what order the coronavirus took things down. So in other words, your defense system, your castle moat is, or wall is vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin, different bionutrients. Quercetin you get in like broccoli or something. And so all these different things that support your immune system, the coronavirus goes in and eliminates, and then it's in. Because it disables your immune system. So the music there, and there's an hour, and it's free, and it boosts all of those values, and it boosts your immune system. So yes, it's good for coronavirus. It's also good for any virus or anything in which you want to strengthen your immune system.
I remember years ago, and I had a Mac, and she only uses PCs, but she was doing a whole thing free for the veterans, for the PTSD, and like just having phenomenal success. Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we work together a lot. I absolutely love her.
Great. Yeah, I can see it's just similar in there. Okay, well, this was so good, and thank you for coming.
Oh, one thing, the book we talked about is called The Lost Waves of Time.
Oh, okay. And then where's that other one?
The other one, both of them are on both sites, Home of Power.
Home of Power.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're going to stop this now, and we'll see you all in a week with a new one.